Welcome to Inspire and Move, the show that inspires you to create, connect, and grow. I'm going to bring you meaningful conversations, aha moments, and all the motivation you need to up-level every part of your life. I'm Carly Ottaway, founder of Inspire and Move, and your personal hype girl. I've gone from fashion school to celebrity stylist to corporate marketing to brick-and-mortar entrepreneurship with my husband, each time learning incredible lessons how to pivot, reimagine, and implement the steps to become successful. I'm passionate about inspiring others to live their best life, a life of joy. We have the power to design a life that we love, because life is too short not to. The best part is that you weren't meant to do this alone. If you feel like you are meant for more, let me ride shotgun with you, and together, let's get you to where you want to go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Inspire and Move podcast. I am your host, Carly Ottaway, and I am so excited to welcome one of my very dear friends, Carly Ottaway, to the show today in studio.
Yay, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Allie.
How long have we talked about doing this?
Oh my gosh, a long time.
Thank goodness we've waited as long as we did, because now you're a published author.
It was meant to be. The timing always works out.
But before we really dive into all of that magic, because that I feel will take so much of the attention of our conversation, because this is a massive celebration, Carly is also the founder of Web of Words.
Yes.
Which I know that you have done some amazing work for some of my friends.
Yes.
And it's just so cool how our worlds have collided. That how long have we been in each other's life now? Like 2-3 years?
I was actually just speaking about this at brunch. Someone was asking me, and it's only been 2 years, which is crazy. I'm like, it feels like so much longer.
And our connection point is the one and only Christina Bartold.
Yes, of course.
We love her. We love having her on the show.
Yes.
And now, so you have just celebrated this massive milestone of becoming a published author.
Yeah, it's like truly a lifelong dream come true. It's been such a wild journey getting here, but it still feels surreal. It still feels surreal.
I was just going to say, if I'm going to ask you, what emotion are you feeling right now? Go.
Yeah, I think still overwhelm, honestly. I feel like I'm like constantly pinching myself that, is this real life now? You know, I feel like I'm kind of stepping into this whole new identity that's come with this launch. And I felt that way from the beginning. I kind of had this understanding and this knowing that the book was really going to change things for me. And I didn't mean that from the book itself as a product. It was who I was becoming in the process of sharing my story in this way with the world.
So you just said how you've had a lifelong dream of becoming a published author. Are we talking like 2, like 8, 14?
Yeah, I feel like it was like 6 to 8. Kind of around that. When I was, as a young girl, I loved playing Harriet the Spy. I lived in a very small town, not much happening. So literally I'd sit and look out my window, and the one single person that would walk by in the hour, I'd, write about their life and make up a whole story. So I just always loved writing and journaling, and it was my favorite way to communicate and just process my own thoughts and emotions. So I do feel like I always wanted to be a writer, and I loved books as a kid, loved to read. And it just always kind of felt like a knowing of something that I would do one day.
Okay, well, I love that you said that you played Harriet the Spy, because I absolutely did.
Yes.
Please tell me you had the black and white notebook.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Oh, and R.I.P. Michelle Thatchenberg.
Yes.
Our true Harriet Spy is not here anymore. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely not the point I wanted to make, but I did need to point that out, that I felt very aligned.
Yeah.
So I think this is so beautiful, because Web of Words, you are really exceptional at telling stories.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of what you do with your team.
Exactly. And so I actually started my career in journalism. So I was always loved sharing people's stories. I loved the interview process, loved diving deep. I'm not a small talker. Like, let's skip and get to the good stuff. And then I kind of like fell into marketing and social media, and eventually built my own business around it and started working more with brands and sharing brand stories. And I really kind of became behind the keyboard. I felt safest there. I like shining the light on other people's stories and sharing their stories. And so this was a whole process of truly stepping into my own story and being on the other side, kind of sitting in the client seat in a lot of ways, which I think is so important, that we all need to experience that every now and then. But yeah, it's been like, I do feel like looking back, I can see where all the dots connected when they needed to get me here.
What a beautiful journey from that childhood vision and what you enjoyed doing to, graduating school, journalism, starting your own company, your own agency, the purpose of it and what you do with your clients, and now having this beautiful piece to connect it all together.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of weird in that way that I always did kind of have a knowing of what I wanted to do. And I always followed that knowing without knowing probably at the time that it was very intuitive for me to go along that journey. But I do feel like I've always felt called to sharing in this way and built the business, in a way that just felt very aligned with my purpose, and then was able to share those experiences now in my first book. And
First book.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So your first book,
Yes.
Coming Home.
Yes.
What was the initial vision for it?
Oh, I knew I really wanted to write a book about the power of storytelling and sharing your story. And I knew that in order to do that, I had to go first and be prepared to share my own story in a way that I never have before.
I just got chills.
So I really kind of went through, it's such a journey of inner work. And like, I know that we're both self-help junkies, like love personal development. And that's what I loved reading, in my kind of formative years too. So I didn't necessarily think I was going to write a personal development book. I still think I have a fiction book in me too. Like I love that world too. And that would be a really fun, creative pursuit. But I feel like it just kind of took its own shape as I went. It was a very free flow kind of subconscious writing process for me, very like heavily in my journaling practice. A lot of journal entries became like turned into chapters. I do feel like it's the way it's written is kind of like these little love letters to what started as kind of my younger self, and then it kind of took on their own shape from there. So I don't feel like I had this very specific plan, or I did have a bit of an outline. I am a former like control freak, so I do like to plan things, but I really had to actually let go of the structure and just let it flow the way that it was meant to.
I love what you said about former control freak. I was like, interesting. I sometimes think I'm a former people pleaser, but still I think working through that relationship. So when you started writing the book, like did you sit down, were you like notebook, computer, typewriter, notes app, like how did you start?
All of the above, honestly. Like I said, I do feel like a lot of it was kind of from my journal, from my notebook, but as I got into the depths of the book starting to take shape, a lot of it was through notes on my phone and just literally having these ideas, or voice notes that I would voice note myself on a walk and then go and transcribe that later. Like some of my favorite chapters actually came from voice notes that I sent myself on a walk, which felt actually a little bit unnatural to me in my process, because I do typically more like to communicate through actually physically writing, either in my journal or at a keyboard. But when I was in it and I felt so aligned, and that's when like the creative juices were flowing. Don't get me wrong, there were still months at a time that I would like nothing was coming out, and I would, set it to the side and move on to something different and then come back to it. But I feel like it was kind of all mediums.
And you mentioned how, a lot of this is, or earlier on in the book, is letters to your younger self. Are you someone that either actively does or has done in the past inner child work?
Yeah, I kind of share a little bit about that journey. I've probably gotten more deep into that in the last couple of years, I would say. And that's been a huge part of getting to where I was at with the book and sharing my story in this way, and like really stepping into my authentic self. I feel like the book was this kind of return to my roots, to my most authentic essence, really, like thinking of that young girl who loved to write and coming back to her and shedding everything else that kind of, some distractions along the way, or feeling like following the shoulds versus what actually felt good to me. So yeah. If I could just write books forever, I think that would be a dream.
Did it feel like a really natural process for you?
It did. There were still definitely challenging parts. I think, I've always identified as a writer, so that part did feel very natural to me. But at the same time, like there were definitely days where I'm like, nothing's coming. And having all the self-doubts. And I'm like, especially after writing one chapter and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, what have I done? And then I'd give myself a little bit of space and I'd come back to it and I'd be like, okay, actually, this is pretty good. Like, okay, I could, build upon this. So it really is such a roller coaster ride in the creative process too. But I felt like so lit up in that journey.
I love how like when I think about, like, I think I have a goal of writing a book. Like it comes and goes in waves. At one point, I think I shared this with you. I wanted to write a book before I was 40, which I basically have days. Yeah. So I got to like TikTok. I got to work on that. But I always envisioned, and it's 100% from the movie. Oh my God, now I'm like wanting to tell you the exact character name of the movie. Is what's the Christmas movie where there's like 12 different stories and no, not The Holiday. Oh my gosh, so awkward.
Oh yeah, Love Actually.
Thank you, Love Actually. Sorry, I
Got you.
scratched you. I was like using this reference, I can't remember the name, but how he goes to this like beautiful part of France or Europe to like write on a typewriter. I was like, 100% that's how I'm gonna write a book. And it'll be in this like beautiful, quiet place.
Oh my gosh, and you were just in Paris, which is my dream, what I fantasized, writing in cafes in Paris. And I think that was actually part of it, is I did romanticize the writing process in my mind, and I had to actually get real with myself and be like, okay, I have 2 young kids, I have a business, and if I'm actually going to do this and make this dream a reality, it's not going to be so glamorized as the vision in my head. Not that it can't be, and I still did. There was one day where I actually booked myself into a hotel, and I stayed at a hotel, and I wrote. It wasn't a fancy hotel though, so it wasn't quite there, but it felt like but so much of it honestly just happened in the cracks of my day, and like at night after the kids went to bed, and I would have a download, or pulling myself in between meetings and kind of just like writing out a chapter. So I think like anything, when you really want to make it happen, you find those windows of time, and you just have to make it a priority. But I want to read your book, Allie. It's happening.
Okay, it's happening. Maybe by the time I'm 41.
That's all right. That's all right.
It's so interesting what you shared, Carly, because I feel like me for sure, but maybe the average person listening or watching thinks that writing a book would be this like glamorous moment, like what we see in Love Actually.
Yes.
That you're at this typewriter overlooking the water and it's serene and someone's bringing you tea. That, hearing you say it was in the cracks of your day between meetings, parenting, deliverables for your team.
Yeah.
And you were able to task switch from caring about someone else's story to leading in your story.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you look back at the B-roll, when I tried to capture myself in the journey, it's like so disheveled, mom bun, like in my sweats, like was definitely the majority of when it happened. And as much as a lot of it was following when I would get those creative downloads and ideas would hit, so much of it too was just like actually forcing myself to block off that time. And when I said, today's going to be a writing day, and even though there were a million other things pulling for my attention, actually following through, getting my ass in the chair, sitting at the keyboard, and really focusing on actually making it happen. And
did you have a timeline for when you wanted the book completed?
I didn't really have a timeline when I set out. It was like, I think it was January 2023 that I officially was like, okay, this is actually something that I'm going to take seriously. And I'm sick of putting this at the top of my goal list or manifestation list every year and then not following through. But I let it happen slowly. I really didn't want to force it. I feel like the whole kind of write a book in 30 days does a little bit of a disservice to the actual journey of the creative process and letting the book kind of become what it is. What I think is cool now too, and it was especially evident in the editing process, was I was going back and editing chapters that I had written like literally 2 years prior to when I was writing some of the final chapters, which, things got edited and moved around. So it's not necessarily that it's in that linear way now in the finished product, but it was so cool because I felt like I was seeing this, other side of myself. And I was really proud of myself for writing when I didn't know what the ending was going to look like.
Ooh.
And actually letting myself trusting in the journey, in the process, without knowing the how of how I would get to the end, but also without knowing what the end of my story was yet. And it's still just one chapter in my story. But the end came as it does. And, it came together as it was meant to.
So how did you come to securing the title?
Oh, I love sharing this. Okay, so the cover of the book, you'll see a swan, and that is a big part of how the title downloaded for me. So I was like really having a hard time with the title. I'm like, my inner perfectionist was like, this title has to be perfect. Like, why isn't it coming to me? Nothing was clicking. And at this point, so I started writing this book when we were in between houses. We were living in a rental, and it was very much an in-between kind of season of life. But at this point that I'm sharing now, it was in the spring. We had moved into our house that we had built, and we started noticing these swans that would fly by in the evening at sunset, like around the same time every day, like 10 to 8. We would actually hear them. If you've ever heard like trumpeter swans, they have this kind of distinct like trumpet sound. And we would hear them in the distance, and then they'd come by and they'd glide across the sky. It was so like picturesque against the sunset. And so it stopped you in your tracks. You had to pay attention. And then I started noticing that literally the same time every night, my husband and I would be out on the deck, like our, kids would be in bed. We're having our like after our evening kind of ritual, and they would come by. And it just like clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, they're coming home. And then it just like felt so powerful, because felt like we had come home. We had come home to the house that we had built. And so much of the story is about me coming home back to my true self, and, like that, this lifelong dream kind of coming true. So it just felt like this full circle moment. And instantly it was like, that's it. That's the title.
I have chills again. Oh my gosh, I need like a wool sweater for this interview because I have so many chills. Carly, that's really beautiful.
I think it's just like a reminder of the power of slowing down and paying attention. We kind of have this like, we want to get the answer immediately, and we want to figure it all out and land it perfectly, but like giving yourself the time, like again, coming back to not rushing that process and that creative process. And I do feel like it was a very kind of spiritual journey for me. I feel like I asked the universe of like, what is the title of this book? And like, it gave me such a powerful sign that was so obvious, but it was because I was actually also slowing down and paying attention and not just caught up in the next task and like, letting myself get wrapped up in all of that.
Okay, talk to me more about this, because this is a season that I think I need to open my doors to, is slowing down a little bit.
Yeah. Really, Ellie?
I know it's where there's a lot of friction in how I'm feeling about this. So I am all ears to understand and learn how that works, because I hear such great things from friends that have done it. And, you slow down, not slow down to speed up necessarily, but slow down to be so open to more.
Yeah.
And I, like you, am spiritual on the woo scale.
Yes.
So I would love to understand what that journey has been for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like so much of it is creating that kind of extra space in your calendar, and just finding like, one thing I've learned about myself, like through my astrology, especially, actually I'm a Scorpio moon. And if anyone knows anything about that, it's like, I really love my rituals. So when I actually take the time to be very intentional about my rituals, like it forces me to slow down. So like my sauna, I love to do a meditation in the sauna, or even a walking meditation in nature. So finding those moments in my day that I can like clear space and sometimes just like have a silent walk too. I love to listen to a podcast on a walk, but I intentionally I'm just going to go for a walk and like listen to nature and be in nature. I find that, I actually find so much comes from that. I get so many downloads from just like sitting by the pool and not listening to anything and just being out or going for a walk. And that's when my best ideas hit. Or, that's why your best ideas often hit in the shower. Cause like finally you're just in the shower.
I can't use anything.
Exactly. You're not scrolling. You're not, going like racing through your to-do list maybe a little bit. But so I think it comes with forcing yourself at first to actually carve out these slower moments. And then like anything, they start to, you see the reward in that, and then it gets a little bit addicting, and then it's a lot easier to carve out the time for that. So it's been a huge part of my creative process. And so I know how valuable it is for me to create space in my calendar. And it's not hard for me to do that anymore in terms of like prioritizing that time.
Was it hard for you at the beginning?
Yeah, for sure. And I do think motherhood played a role in that too, because kind of it was at a point where like my calendar was too full. Like even I started meditating early on in my motherhood journey, and I was such a bad meditator. Like I would just fall asleep. I'm like, I'm terrible at this. Like,
snooze.
Right? How do people do this? But I realized I was very much kind of in survival mode, and I just needed to sleep. That's what the meditation actually was serving me, and that's what I needed. And then as my kids, started sleeping and got a little bit more independent, and I got a little bit more space, instead of filling that the way that I used to, I was very intentional about like, okay, what used to take up this kind of space that has evolved, now I'm going to fill it in this way that's totally different from how I did before. I love the like 10 times, what is the book? The 10 times.
Oh, 10x?
Yeah, 10x is
Better than 2x?
Yeah. Yeah, say I love it, but then I jeopardize it, or I butcher
I
the
feel like
title.
that happens when you're on podcast interviews.
Right?
You're like, so that's a book that I love.
Yeah.
Blank.
But I kind of, part of it was that whole notion of if you want different results, you have to do something completely differently. And so I knew, coming into that season of my life that I had to go about things, and it started with my calendar and with my schedule in a completely different way than I had before. And so eventually that led to the book, and that is what filled that space.
So present day, well, I actually know what you did today. So like on an average day, what would your calendar look like?
Oh, yeah. So I really try to block my days and my week so that I try to have like my call days all together, so that I can have a day with no calls where I'm like purely being creative, working kind of in the vision of the business. Right now I'm building out a new offer, so I need a spacious day when I'm doing that. And, I feel like I'm always content's always on my mind. It's always like weaved into my schedule, no matter what. I'm trying to document what I'm doing and letting those kind of ideas come together for content. But structuring my week so that I have my call days, I have my times when I'm checking in with my team, and then I have my time that is just for me to be creative. And then same with like how I bring in other parts of my day around like motherhood and when I'm with my kids, and really just focusing on presence, which I think is so hard in, this time when we are like constantly, our phones are just right there, and I'm very aware of how often my kids even see me on my phone. I was just having a conversation about this earlier today about how, I love that I get to pick up my kids at 3:00 from school, but like then they come home and then I'm back to work, and they're seeing me working, and they are seeing me on my phone because I'm often working from my phone, and it's just a different kind of way that they have to get used to it. But at least I'm able to be there, and I'm able to, do snack time and be present in that and help with homework, and then come back. So it's really compartmentalizing those parts of the day, and having their set bedtime so that I know I have my evening that's back for me to fill my own cup, whether that's doing some work that I can do while everything's quiet, or doing like a sauna and a cold plunge, and hanging out with my husband out on the back deck and sipping a glass of wine, whatever that looks like. So it changes every day, but
I like what you said about sort of compartmentalizing your schedule, but even having like those call days and I was just answering a question for someone in our mastermind community about that, how like I love that version of schedule planning where it is, okay, this is call day, this is admin day, this is content day, meeting day. But then I also love the version of like flow.
Totally.
Because like my day presently, like this day, is very full. You actually would probably be horrified if you saw my calendar today.
I admire you. I don't know how you, yes.
But also different season where I don't have like, two small kids that depend on me in a way that you have that extension of your responsibility in your family.
Yeah. And also just even like where you get your energy at. I was just talking about this again before. I didn't realize how introverted I actually am and how much I need time. So like we have a big event, this weekend, and I very intentionally carved out time on Sunday that I can just have for myself before I get back home into mom mode. Because if I don't do that, then I'm not able to be present. I'm just like, I need to just veg out on the couch,
I need a minute.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that though, because I am very much a people person. Like I love community. It's a massive part of my brand and our brick and mortar business. But over the last handful of years where we've really like grown and scaled what it is that we're doing, I have become more introverted. And I don't know if it's part of like growing up as an only child. I'm weird when I answer that question because I've lost a brother and I don't have a relationship with my like half sister anymore. So I very much identify as an only child, but then you have that awkward time. Like, well, I could give you the long story where it's like kind of talking about my different relationships. Got to try to note my audience on that. But I can't help but wonder like, oh, I wonder if this is like my only child identity coming through where I'm really content with my own company.
Yeah.
I love spending time with my husband. And sometimes we're actually very content with just like, let's watch a show in silence together.
Yes.
Or sometimes we'll, take our dogs on a field trip where we actually don't talk.
Yeah.
Because we do talk about things all the time.
Yes.
And it's taken me a learning process to also be okay with that. And even sometimes in friendships where, say you and I are on a girls' trip and we're sitting by the pool sipping wine, and we're like, you want to just read our books?
Yeah.
Because that could actually feel really great for 30 minutes to an hour.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's recognizing the different seasons and letting ourselves evolve and not, defining ourselves by one specific identity. We are just constantly evolving and changing. And, there's seasons of our lives where maybe we need rigid boundaries and the really like time blocked schedule. And then there's other seasons where it actually feels so good for it to be flowy and, really letting yourself feel into that and not thinking that it has to be a certain way because that's how you did it before or because that's how your, best friend did it and how she's found success. Like really just letting it be something, figuring out what works best for you in this season of your life and of your business.
Absolutely. And I think that you can absolutely have flow and change. I kind of now say I'm an extroverted introvert because I can go in a room and I can, be high vibe, people-y energy, no problem. But I will definitely look forward to going home, putting my sweatpants on, or maybe not going to, I say after party so loosely, like, I don't know, a networking after party, but not going necessarily to everything.
Yeah.
But I've also had to learn that kind of exactly as you said.
Yeah. And that's why entrepreneurship is such a personal development journey. It's really that self-awareness, right? So being aware of what you actually need, what actually, fills your cup and feels good for you and lets you step into your best self, your favorite self is what I like to think of. And, not feeling like it has to be a certain way to feel successful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved this episode, it would mean so much to me if you took a few seconds and shared this on social media, sent it to a friend, or left a 5-star review. There is power in community, and I'm so grateful to have you part of mine.